That's it. All right, cool. Now I'm with you. All right, so just to start with, this is a bit of an agenda. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what IxDA is and the program that we run at IxDA, the mentoring program. And then we're going to have a few panels, which is our past mentors and mentees, just to share about their experience around the mentoring program. And then I'm going to share some of the tips that we gathered together and what we learned from running this program for over the years. And we had a bit of time in the final Q&A at the end, and then we'll do a bit of wrap up. So it's probably going to take 2 hours. It depends on how the discussion goes. Okay. Oh, what is going on? Okay, so this is a bit of a housekeeping. So I'm going to ask you to just mute yourself during panel discussions so as to not to interrupt. But I do encourage you to post your question in the Zoom chat so you know what it is. So you've got the Zoom toolbar and then there's a chat button. Post your questions there. And then one of us, like Ulf and Brenda, Mary, will keep an eye on those questions. And then I'm going to ask them to then read it out to the panel and then so we can discuss them. And then when we get to the Q&A, please feel free to unmute yourself so then you can ask questions. So a little bit about what IxDA Sydney. So who is IxDA Sydney? So IxDA Sydney really is a local chapter of the IxDA Global. We have about 110,000 members across 210 cities. So it's one of the biggest, I guess, organizations in the design. So IxDA focus on nurturing and developing activities in discipline or interaction design, but there's also kind of, I guess now is sort of expand to what is interaction design. It's UX, there's service design, there's UI, voice UI, you name it. We are a volunteer-run organization. And as you know, we run meetups, workshops, events, and as well as mentoring program, which is what I'm going to talk a little bit later. So since December 2011, that's when IxDA Sydney was born, we've grown to over 3,500 members. So that's pretty impressive. Just a little bit about the mentoring program. So myself, Vera, I should introduce myself. Sorry about that. And then Vera, and then I have Mary on the call in this as well, and Ulf. And Brenda, we are one of the volunteers at IxDA, and then we run the mentoring program. So what's the mentoring program? So why do we do this? So we provide opportunities for interaction designers, obviously, and interaction designers at all levels to learn about more about their craft, and then from a more experienced professional in the industry. So we've been running this program since 2012. And we currently run 2 terms a year. So terms 1 in March to June. So we just wrapped up that term 1. And then term 2 this year is going to start from September to mid-December. So the frequencies of is usually twice a year, but the month when it starts and finish, it varies according to availability. So currently the program offers the one-on-one sessions, and then also a group mentoring session that we've been experimenting for the last couple of years. Although this year we decided, because of the COVID and restrictions, and we decided that we're going to just run the one-on-one for the next term. So now come to the panel discussion. So I'm going to introduce you to 6 of our panels, 3 mentors and 3 past mentees. So the first one is Kevin Wilkins. Amy Size, James, and Shaw, Joyce, Alice, and Julia. I might just get you guys to maybe introduce yourself a little bit. Maybe you can start with you, Kevin.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We're excited to have a discussion with you. I'm Kevin. Basically, I'm a CX practice lead. Customer experience is my principal focus. For about 4 years, I was with a digital agency called Tequila. And then I finished up with them in January. and have now been basically contracting with different organizations. Back at Tequila for a while, and now I'm on a long-term project with a government agency. I've been with the IxDA mentoring program for about 3 years now, which has been good. I was pretty much working alongside another awesome mentor called Lydia Bradshaw. Last year we did the mentoring circle, and we had 2 sessions of that. And as Vera said, we've gone back to the one-on-one this year, which I think is very smart in regards to our current climate. I think the program itself is unreal. It's taught me a lot as well as a mentor. I think that's enough about me anyway. So thanks.
Okay, do you want to go next, Amy?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy. I have 20 years design experience, and in my first 15 years of graphic design, actually, I've mentored probably more than 30 designers. So when I transitioned into UX, actually in my earlier, probably my first 2 years, I joined the IxDA group mentoring circle, where I met Vera, Brenda, and Ulf. And because I really enjoyed that group mentoring session, I thought when I gained more UX experience, I thought IxDA would be something I'd want to mentor for. And then actually the past few months was the first time I was a mentor for IxDA.
Thanks, Amy. James? Are you here, James?
Hi. Yeah, sorry, I was on mute.
Let's go.
So I'm James. I'm currently a UX design lead with Simplicit as a consultant, and I'm consulting currently at Telstra. I've been for nearly 2 years. Similar to Ermi, I have a 20+ year design history, but for many of the last few years, I've been specializing in enterprise and bringing experiences to their customers. Over a range of customers from Westpac to NBN and currently Telstra. I've always mentored designers, either when I was in a lead role or when I was a manager, but this is the first year that I've done it through IxDA, and I found it incredibly rewarding. We always talk about giving back, and this was one a really hands-on way to do that, but it was also rewarding to myself to hear and see and challenge myself as well about how I can be a better mentor.
Excellent. Now we're going to meet our mentee. So Joyce, do you want to introduce yourself? Is Joyce here today? I haven't heard any. Actually, you know what? I might just...
There's someone in the waiting room, I think.
I think so, which is really weird. And I have to stop sharing. Hang on a sec. See if I can do this.
Yes, as somebody pointed out before, Zoom really needs UX design.
No. Oh, no, Alice is here. I can see her. Ask to unmute. Alice.
Hi.
Hi. We're just wondering where you are.
How are you going? Yes, I'm here. I'm just working in the background. That's why I mute myself and turn off my camera.
Right.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alice. I am currently a designer in Design Farm Collective, which is a business and strategic design firm. Work across quite a variety of different industry here in Australia as well as overseas. And I am a mentee for the term 1 of this year for this program. And that was my first time doing the program as well. And very luckily, I have one of the best mentor I could ask for, which is Sam Hancock. So I have probably one of the best experience I ever had having a mentor like that. And definitely throughout those 3 months of mentoring, I have grown quite a bit, to my own surprise. So very happy to hear and very happy to share my own experience as well. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Alice. Do we have Joyce? No, we don't have Joyce. Okay, do we have Julia?
Yep. Hi, everybody. Hope you had a great day. My name is Julia. I work as UX designer at Macmillan Shakespeare, and I'm also a co-organizer of a not-for-profit organization called Muses Code GS. We previously were known as Node Girls. So we're just focusing on empowering women in IT technology, and we run the full day workshops. That was my first experience with IxDA mentoring. I was a mentee. I had the best experience I ever possibly could imagine. And that experience also inspired me to become a mentor myself. So I'm currently mentoring inspiring, amazing young UX student at General Assembly. So it's really great being a mentee, become a mentor myself. So it's really exciting as well.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. So I think I might just start. So we still don't have Joyce, do we? Because I can't see anything in there. Okay, so I think we're just going to start with the first question then. So the first question is, what did you learn about effective mentorship over the course of the program? So I guess based on your experience, either through IxDA or other, like, your workplace, what did you learn about what effective mentorship looked like? So I'm going to start with maybe Army. So this is a question for both mentors and mentees. So yeah.
What I found to be effective was actually the induction that IxDA gave, because I'm actually used to really casual, unofficial type of one-on-one mentoring. So this is probably the first official program I've been a part of. Mm-hmm. So even that onboarding experience from getting the introduction email, that I think that introduction night, getting to know you type of night. I actually wasn't able to attend that night because I was doing a UX talk, but then I reached out to you, Vera, to pair me up with someone. Yeah. And I found that email just setting up guidelines. Mm-hmm. So at least it sets up my expectations of what to expect in the program. Mm-hmm. It had, I guess, a set date. So we knew it was 3 months to set up regular times, what to expect in the first chat. And I thought setting up those guidelines is really effective and a really good use of our time. So at least I knew what to expect from this program. And then I saw that you guys had paired me up with someone who matched the type of skills that I could offer advice to that mentee. So I thought that was really effective.
Okay.
That whole onboarding experience, yeah.
Yeah. What about the program itself? Like as you run through, like with your mentee, how did you make that as a
it was good because you paired me up with a really good mentee and our personalities clicked. Mm-hmm. So we both had that casual, pretty open, relaxed type of approach. Our personalities blended really well. We were both really respectful of each other's time. So we were rarely ever late to each session. We kept to those regular sessions. We knew sometimes we kept it fairly open. We didn't have a set agenda. And then other times he would ask for specific things he wanted advice on. And then I had my advice or, I guess, resources or tools ready to share with him. So it's kind of, we always came prepared. So that's what I found really effective. So we made the most of our time.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. What about, I'm going to jump into one of the mentee, maybe, so Alice?
Yep. I come prepared. Look at my post-it notes right here, guys. And that's exactly how we run, we, Sam, which is also on this call, how we run things as well. I come prepared with a bunch of post-it notes, which I appreciate. I'm not sure about him. So for me, I feel like that from the beginning, having a really rough idea around what areas or what you want to learn from the mentor, it's kind of will help the mentor understand exactly what to expect and how he or she can help you. And secondly is to follow through the advice, which I name as ABC, always be actioning. So it's great that we are getting advice and we're getting guidance, and that's exactly why I think mentoring program like this is so effective. But it wouldn't be as valuable if I myself as a mentee doesn't hold myself accountable for actioning those advice and guidance. And following that, I also feel by allowing myself to share what had happened after I actioned on those advice and guidance, Sam, my mentor, can get kind of like a feedback for himself as well, so that both of us mutually would learn from that experience.
This sounds like a ideal mentee everyone wants to have, Alice. Okay.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to bounce it back into the mentor. Either maybe Kevin?
Yeah, hi everyone. So look, two things really. I mean, like I kind of really want to echo what Amy said, that like the way that IxDA Sydney has been run in regards to just onboarding their mentors and their mentees is really, really good. I found like the whole, mentoring pairing really effective. Found that sessions has matured a little bit over the last few years. I particularly liked this year's version of it, which was the kickoff, where we had an evening of getting to know like a group of people. It was, I'm not sure that can happen again for a while, obviously, but I did find that was a really great way of doing the pairing and getting some empathy as well, like with the people in the room, even if they weren't going to be your mentee. There was a good opportunity to sort of see the kind of like caliber of people that were on the program. And then I think the tools like the skills matrix was brilliant. It's fantastic to have that kind of like simple document to refer back to. And in my case, it really helped me to formulate, when I was doing the one-to-one mentoring, it helped me to formulate a program. And then that program really, I think, going in terms of, like what happened during the program, I think really commitment is the key. So commitment from like both myself and also from the mentee, and also flexibility to be able to keep the momentum going if things get a little bit sort of hot in the kitchen. So, I was been working for the last 3 years with different types of mentee, but predominantly most of the mentees I've worked with have jobs. So some of them would say, oh, look, work's got on top of me. I can't really make that session. I'm so sorry. I was looking forward to it. And then we kind of like, if we're told pretty much in advance of what, the circumstances are, we can either rearrange the date or where I can forward most of the material I was going to present anyway. And then we can pick up like, the reins of how well that material was received, like, down the path. The mentoring circle I thought was exceptionally good because we had, like in my particular group, we had about 5 mentees on average. And between myself and Lydia, we really felt that we were able to bounce off one another. So that was really good in terms of our expertise complementing one another. Like Lydia's a very practical designer, like she's very good hands-on. So I was able to step back and she could take over and vice versa. So look, all in all, I just think, it's a great program, and kind of what I learned about, effective mentoring was primarily to just stay on a course and, to try and navigate around, real world problems. So, I mean, like, my last session, myself and my mentee had to navigate the pandemic. So obviously we're both a little bit kind of thrown for six, but we still managed to get through it somehow, which was great. And I'm really glad that we were able to do that. So there you go.
Thanks, Kevin. What about, I'll give it to James now.
Hey. Yeah, I think the key for me was the planning, and though I missed the initial meeting introduction, being paired with Slava was amazing, and my mentee was aligned in a lot of my thinking, and so we set out a plan quite at the beginning, and we referred back to that to check in, and obviously with the pandemic, it gave us a real focus in terms of what we were trying to achieve out of it. And so, yeah, just playing back to that plan from the beginning of what success was going to look like for each of us was really helpful.
Cool. Thanks, James. Finally, Julia, what are your experience as a mentee?
I guess I definitely would agree with Kevin and Amy that that onboarding process really helped me to focus on what how the whole program might look like and what to expect and what do I have to prepare for it, as well as different tools like the Miro board was just absolute savior, especially in the whole COVID and pandemic situation. That was really great to be able to have a hands-on on the tools. Also, during the whole program, it's really helped me the encouragement and support from my mentor. She was always there for me. She always would provide me lots of different resources which I can gain information from and read through. And she gave me lots of homework, not too much, but a few. But that's really helped to prepare. That's really helped me to have a hands-on and really dive in deep into the whole topics and understanding the goals and really achieve those goals. So yeah, those couple of things really helped me to start and finish the whole program.
Cool. Anybody else wants to add to what's on been said before we move on to the next question? Also from the I guess the audience, feel free to unmute yourself and then add on into that. No? Okay, so I'm going to move to the next question. So what are the questions you ask yourself about your, I guess this is potential mentor and mentee, to know if it's going to be a good match? So at the IxDA, we try to match you as best as we can based on what you tell us in the application. However, we wonder, like, you know, in yourself, what are the things that you kind of, I guess, almost probably like a criteria, I guess, for you, sort of like, oh, is it going to be a good match when I meet this person? And that's sort of what are the thoughts that go through your mind? James, I'll start with you.
Yeah, look, it was a bit nerve-wracking. I thought of applying for a number of years, actually, and kind of always was hesitant. And it was my director who sort of nudged me over the edge, because it can be a bit daunting to say, do I add value? Have I got something to teach? And knowing my own skill set is, does somebody else want that? So obviously, you know, my expertise is in stakeholder management, enterprise, been focusing on design ops for the last few years. So if that's something a mentee needs, I'm completely capable. But if it was something, you know, more on the far edge of research, you know, UX research, I probably couldn't necessarily offer as much. So that was some hesitation. But as I said, the selection process, I ended up with somebody who was completely aligned to what I could offer.
Good. Well, sometimes we don't know whether it's going to work out. Like, you know, I always says like, it's going to be like a blind date sometimes. You're trying to match people out, you know. Anyway, so what about, yeah, I'm going to pass it on to Julia.
For me, one of the questions I was asking myself, would my mentor like to drink wine as much as I do? And when I found out she does, the jokes aside, I was really curious to find out if my mentor done any mentoring course before, like any programs before, and if we coming together from experiencing this journey for the first time, and we're going to dive into it together.
Yeah.
All the mentors already done it a couple of times, and I would kind of follow their lead. So that was kind of the questions I was curious about. I also wanted to find out how passionate my mentor would be around their craft and what they do, because that would share our own, that was something in common we would share, and we kind of dive in from there. So my mentor was perfect. She was amazing. She loved to drink wine. She was really passionate about her craft, and we really dive into that journey together. So yeah.
Perfect. Kevin?
Yeah, look, two things really. Like, I think the process in the beginning allows you, like, you know, as a mentor, to sort of nominate, you know, the sort of person you think you might be best matched with. So in terms of practicalities, like, you know, back in the day when we were meeting in person, you know, it was good that we're able to sort of like say, oh, it'd be good if this person was in the CBD and like blah, blah, blah. And also kind of like nominate a time as well. It's important because then that's really a good match for you both in regards to practicality. But the other thing for me was that because I'm not an academic, you know, I'm not from the teaching world as such. I have been in the teaching world like back in the day, but recently, no. What is important for me was that I probably didn't get matched with someone that was just too soon out of college, and therefore they didn't have any kind of like, you know, real world experience under their belt. So I was asking to be matched with, which successfully I was, someone that was probably about at least 18 months to 2 years, you know, working. The reason I think that was good for me was because we were able to converse about, you know, our daily routines and stuff like that. And also, you know, it was really good in terms of, especially with my last mentor, because she was actually started the mentoring session with one job. And then right in the middle of the program, she was offered another job, which she was transitioning to. I could really identify with that transition. I could really understand that we needed to maybe focus on some areas of the stuff I had lined up more than others, because she was trying to make an impression with her new team. So that was a practical thing that I felt was really good. And also just some of the other mentees that I've worked with through IxDA, they often want to know about, you know, what happens in a real world scenario, like when, you know, things like are kind of like, you know, like a bit more elevated. So their role might be as a, you know, UX designer, senior UX designer, whatever you want to call it. And they might not always get the opportunity to represent their own work, or they might not always get the opportunity to run a session. So it's really good to kind of like, you know, empower the conversation and say, well, here's what you need to do. And like, I think next time you're in that meeting, you know, be proactive and stuff like that. So I think all the practicalities really pay off. So I think the practicality of getting the right location, getting the right time is important, but also from a mentor's perspective, getting paired with the right type of person is important as well.
Cool. Pass on to Alice.
For me, there are two aspects to this. One, I was really nervous if I would be matched at all. So I think for mentee, that's like one barrier down. So once I know that I got matched, awesome. And then the next aspect is who is it that I've been matched? And that's when the nervousness gone up another level. While I'm being grateful, but at the same time, I want to make sure that the chemistry is right. And also that what I can learn is exactly the areas of expertise or domain he or she can bring as a unit. So when it's kind of like a luck thing, but when I did find out my mentor was Sam, which we share a bit of a similar experience, or at least from from a professional perspective, he works in a consultancy, and so do I. So that I know instantly that would be a good match because of the similar challenges or the type of engagement, the type of work that we both have will be similar. So for us, that will be the key question I'll be asking myself, is that do we have a similar experience, similar background? Do we work in the same similar domain, so that we have a area of a topic that we can have a conversations around?
Cool. Thank you. Abby?
Yep. I think the first question I asked myself was, in terms of seeing if my mentee and I were a good match, was, do I have the right skill set and level of experience to be able to offer him the right advice that he needs to help him in his career? So just making sure, we check that the things that he put in that survey when he applied to be a mentor are actually the types of things that I can offer him in all of our mentor sessions. And I think generally, in terms of seeing if this is a good match, just repeating, see if our personalities match, see if he's receptive to the advice that I'm giving him. So at least making sure that I'm listening to all the things he needs advice on and making sure I answer his questions and that I'm a good listener as well. So making sure that 3-month period is a good experience for both of us.
Thank you. Just in addition to that, how long did it take you guys to know whether it's a good match or not? This is curious from our point of view as an organizer or facilitator to this program. Sometimes we sort of say just go in the first meeting and get to know each other, but we kind of in the dark in terms of how long did it take for you guys to know whether it is a good match? I'll throw it out there so anyone wants to jump in.
Sorry, you go, James.
I was just going to say, for me, it was pretty much when we went through each other's backgrounds and got an understanding of how we worked. And there was a degree of practicality in Slava's approach, my mentee's approach, that gelled well. So, it was, it wasn't too long into the process. I think kind of the first night we kind of thought, as we worked out that, we've got a similar approach to how we solve problems.
Cool. Kevin?
I was just going to say that, in all instances, really pretty quickly. What astounded me, though, or has astounded me, is with the mentoring circle, how interestingly, a group of 6 people can quickly become sort of, kind of what's the word for it? Have a common cause and stuff like that, so I was really impressed with how, at the beginning of those, kind of mentoring circles, you think, well, there's 6 different people. They've all got different needs. I'm not sure if this is going to work out. From a personality perspective, both myself and Lydia were both blown away with how well those people interjected with one another. We originally, initially started off saying things like, because I was, my company was sponsoring, the event almost, by allowing us to be there after hours and providing, some snacks and drinks and stuff like that, it seemed like we were kind of running the show on lots of fronts. But after a while, the team themselves started bringing their own food. They started really using the Slack channel very effectively and really bonding together as well. So I was really impressed with the setup for the mentoring circle in terms of, how well people gelled quickly. But going back to the one-to-ones, I think I only ever had one mentee, that it didn't quite work out, but that was mainly due to, not personality thing, I hope, but more due to, life circumstances from her angle, she got sick took some time out and then was faced with some other issues as well. So all in all, I think that matching system that you've got, I think, as Alice said earlier, that there's a really good degree of scrutiny there that matches us well. So well done, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, there was a question here in the chat from Jacqueline, and she's saying, asking, what do you do if you think it's not going to work out as a mentee or mentor? And maybe not only in regards to our program, but in general. Yeah.
Good question. I'm interested to find out about this one. Anyone want to answer that? Amy?
I can answer that.
Yeah.
I actually had one of those experiences. So I'm sure a lot of the other mentors experienced this as well, or just everyone in this talk, where, designers might reach out to me on LinkedIn and just DM me and just ask me for my advice. When there was one instance, and I'm always happy to answer every question. There was one instance where I felt as if the advice he was asking, which happened to be soft skills, he needed help in those soft skills, but how he was communicating to me was quite disrespectful. So obviously this is something he needs advice on, and he wasn't listening to my advice. So I pointed it out. I was quite assertive with it to say, look, this is the advice that I was going to give you. But he kept cancelling on me, even though he was the one who reached out to me. And so I just simply said, this is the advice that you need. I think you need to work in your soft skills. I was very practical in the advice that I gave him. I even listed it. And I said, I don't think this is going to work out, but if you do still want to have advice, you can reach out to me. But this is my advice to you and what you should work on. And then I said, good luck. But I still kept it fairly open. Yeah.
Be transparent, honest.
Yeah. Just pretty straightforward, because obviously the soft skills was the area that he needed help in, and that's I guess where he was struggling in terms of communicating to me. So it was kind of a little bit ironic. But yeah, still kept it friendly. Yeah.
Does anyone else want to add to that? Can you read out the questions again, Ulf?
Yes, sure. I mean, what do you do if you think if it's not going to work out as a mentee or mentor? And maybe somebody else in the audience also had an idea. It doesn't mean that you can't speak up,
We're going to keep this open. So just feel free, unmute yourself, and then if you want to answer that question, or what do you think? Have you got an idea?
And, I mean,
anybody else?
Do we have a lot of people actually in the audience? Would be interesting to know if you guys already did mentoring or not, and had something,
Well, I know there's a couple of them at least a mentee, and I don't know how many of them left. That's okay. So just to answer on that, like I can tell you what we do from the mentoring program. This is where we are as a team to become that mediator between mentor and mentee, because it can be quite awkward when you first meet up, you're not really clicking, and we always sort of said, like, look, it's okay to say no if you think that's not going to be like working out the way you want it or your vision, and then we'll manage that communication. So that's kind of making it easier for you guys. But if you're kind of reaching out on your own, that's probably a slightly different issue. So like what Amy's experienced. Okay, so I kind of just go next to the next questions. This one here is for the mentor particularly. What do you think the difference between mentorship and teaching, or is there any difference? Amy, you want to start?
I feel like a mentorship is you're more of a guide and you're kind of catering your advice to that specific person or group.
Yeah.
Compared to teaching, whether it's like at a design school or institute, a teacher is required to teach a set criteria or curriculum, whereas a mentor can also be peer-to-peer as well.
Okay. James?
I think a lot of the aspects of mentoring are taking the individual's unique circumstance and potentially broadening that out based on your past experience. So everybody's career is completely unique, and the paths that are in front of them are unique. And so as a mentor, your real role is to just lay out potential roads they could take or potential paths that they could take in their career, and surround those with content that is relevant. So guiding them to the things that take you from that apprentice level to mastery. So sometimes sharing some war stories, I think is a real crucial one as well. Often it's our failures that we learn the most. And so that exchange back and forth and finding commonality and ways of approaching things, especially around enterprise, it's its own beast and has some unique challenges. And so just showing some of those and exposing the mentee to some of those real world challenges can be really beneficial.
Cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I agree with all of that, by the way. The only thing I was going to add to that is that I think mentoring feels more practical and collaborative as opposed to, teaching, which generally can be, like more, sort of guidance step by step. Best practices, this and this, so I think with like mentoring, in my experience, it's more collaborative. It's more like, I think, as James said, real world experiences, saying, okay, let's talk about something that happened to you today at work. Like, let's talk to you about an event that you might consider going to, or let's talk about how you might go for that job interview, or let's talk about more how you'll prepare for that meeting tomorrow, stuff like that, so it's less teaching and more collaborative, I think, because somebody, during that process, you're I think Omi was saying that, like, if you set up the kind of communication correctly, you don't mind getting the odd, like, message or text or Slack message, whatever you've decided is your way of communicating during the mentoring sessions. If it's sort of like, it feels like, you're adding value, and it's also like, you're working on, your next session together collaboratively. So it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. If you do have a mentee that is under a lot of pressure, so like with my last, last mentee, she was going for this new job. So she was actually trying to prepare for that interview as well as trying to do her job as well. But at the same time, once she got the job, was, during the process, she then wanted to, like, start that job on the best foot. So our kind of like mentoring sessions went a little bit more practically collaborative, because we were saying, like, well, what can we change now in regards to what we were going to talk about and what we were going to cover, to something that is actually going to, when you start on day one, you'll have some kind of knowledge that is associated with some of these new tasks. So they actually gave her quite a lot of, because of COVID, they got her working from home for quite some time before she ventured into the office and stuff. So we were able to sort of like prepare ourselves quite well. So when she did actually finally have a face-to-face with them, and, even though that was virtual, she was really impressed with how it went. So I'm glad that we were able to collaborate like that,
I think that
Yeah.
ability to pivot based on feedback or as the journey goes is probably one of the significant differentiations between teaching and mentorship.
Good point.
I agree.
Cool. All right. So the next question, this is now for our mentees. So how did you prepare for your mentoring sessions? So Alice, you mentioned before, you know, you're very much prepared. You got all Post-its and everything. So anything else that you want to share? How did you guys prepare and what did you do?
So at the beginning, for our first sessions.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I would talk both, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So for the first sessions, I was super nervous. I don't know who this person is. I want to make sure that I make a good impression so that the entire experience would start off on a good note. So I then spent about maybe 15 minutes prior to the meeting, just writing down where I am right now. What sort of projects I've worked on, and what aspect of those projects did I kind of specialize in, did I feel most comfortable with. And then on the next page, I write down where I want to be in the future, where I want to go to. So between those two pages are then the gaps and the blockers or barriers or challenges that I would love to address and establish using Sam's help. So that's literally what I did, is to show him that notebook, be like, I want your help in that gap, please. So that's how we kind of kicked off the first meeting, which I think he found it to be quite helpful as well, as I'm narrowing down exactly the focus areas I would love to discuss. And then for the rest of the sessions, I typically organize it as what had happened at work for the past 2 weeks, because we sort of catch up each 2 weeks or 3 weeks depending on the schedule. And what I learned, what I found challenging, and what I found interesting. So it's quite formal. It's quite informal, I would say. And I typically be the one that actually steering the conversations more than he was, which I think he enjoys. But then it was for these particular mentoring sessions, term, what I found most valuable was because in the middle of it, I got into a side project, which I was freelancing. So it was literally a real project, and I had tons of questions regarding sales. I have tons of questions regarding client engagement. I have tons of questions regarding processes, how to manage clients' expectation. So it was happening in real time. And as a result, the questions that I was asking every time we have a session is quite really, really specific and targeted. And because of that, the actual dialogue happened between me and Sam become really, really productive. So I think that it was luck, but it's definitely a element of what preparation has gone into it.
Thank you. Julia.
Can I just add something about what that kind of scenario really is good for, is that, like, you know, like when I think back to my own kind of trying to get into the industry scenario, if you as a mentee can pivot quickly with your mentor from, you know, theoretical concepts to like a real job, it's quite exciting, and it's also like quite empowering for both parties. Because what happens is that, like, you know, as a mentee, you know, you're very nervous about sort of, you know, the outcomes, and you're worried that you're being paid for this role, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But the good thing about being a mentor and being able to help out in that capacity is that you kind of see an end result. And, you know, that's really, really very, like, it's a bit like I was saying before, it wasn't a project, it was actually my mentee was going for a new role. So the end result was she got the job, right, which I was so glad about. But you know, the other end result was that she prepared herself really well for that role. And going back to any kind of freelance work or something like that that comes in, or work associated, you know, it's a tricky one because, you know, I think mentees feel that they can't ask the mentors about real work because they're not paying them, you know, for their advice. But on the other side of the coin, if something goes well and, you know, you've had a part in helping that, you know, get to that level, it's very satisfactory. It's very satisfying, I mean, personally. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Julia, so how did you prepare for your sessions? Did you prepare at all?
Definitely did. In my experience with my mentor, we really set up our goals in the first couple of sessions. So we really knew what my goals are, what Patty's goal, my mentor, what the goals are, and how we're trying to achieve it. So we kind of map it out the whole journey of what task we need to do, what we're going to go through in order to achieve that task. And I think I mentioned earlier that she gave me a bit of a homework, so I knew what I needed to do in order to prepare, in order to making sure I really dive into those topics and have a better understanding. And if there's something I don't understand or something I would like to have a bit more clarity on, I would just prepare the huge list of 103 questions, and we would just sit down and go through each question, and she would be really passionately would answer all the questions and gave me lots of examples. So at least in my case, for me it's really helpful to understand the scenario or the problem or situation with given examples, so I can actually understand what's going on and how it actually worked out. So she knew that, and she really supported me through the whole that experience, and she answered all my questions, and she was smiling all the time, which has really encouraged me because she always had that positive approach during that experience, which really helped me as well to open up and be a bit more open to that as well. So yeah, that's me.
Sure, thank you. So the next question is actually probably already partly answered by your by the previous question, but is there anything you want to maybe add? What I'm looking at here, so how did you set up your goals? So it's a lot of one of the challenges that people told us is that, like, you know, how do you set up the goal? Like, you know, what do I do? Like, you know, where do I start, kind of thing. So do you guys have any, like, I think Alice has shared a few of her tips in terms of, you know, evaluating yourself between where you are right now, where do you want to be, and where the gaps are and stuff like that. So is there anything else that you want to add, Alice? And
not on the top of my head, but I would say that the kind of like a statement template I was using is in 3 years time, I want to do what I want to be in a position to do what. So it was really, really future focused. But then I also have another statement to pull back a little bit and be super realistic around, okay, in 3 months time, what is the ideal outcome look like for both of us, and share that quite transparently. Just be straightforward around what you're looking for out of this mentorship, while being extremely respectful around the input and time the mentor has put forward as well.
Thank you. Julia, do you have any tips? Do you have any tools that you use?
So in my experience, what happened is the COVID happened. So it was all what was going on, and I had a long sit down with myself, and I just had the moment of realization where I am in my current career, where I would like to be, and what Alice saying, how can I achieve there? What's the goals, and how can you go there? So I really had a clear understanding, which happened really. Just at some point. I don't even know how that happened, but I had this realization of what I would like to achieve and how to do that and what potentially can help me out. And I shared that with Patty, and she's like, I know how to get there, let's do it. And but I guess if if you're asking for a tip, just be open, have a chat with your mentor or the mentee, and try to have this conversation. And let's see where the conversation going to take you. Just be open-minded and go for it.
Thank you. I might throw this out as well to the mentor, actually. How do you sort of help your mentee in terms of setting up that goal? Because I think part of the big role that mentor has in particularly in the very beginning of the process is to give some directions of what are the goals that the mentee wanted to achieve in the program, for example. So anyone want to jump in on that one? James, Kevin, Army?
I can have a crack at it. I think the goal kind of comes out in that initial meeting. I mean, like when you have that initial, because I kind of sort of feel like, we've had, when we're doing the one-to-one, it's like we normally have I call it like a sort of coffee chat, really. You kind of meet up for an hour and you just talk about aspirations and stuff like that. You don't talk about any program as such. And then what I've done, not in the mentoring circle, but definitely in the one-to-ones, is then go away, regroup, think about it, and then come back to like the mentee with a program. And the idea is that that program will lead to, whatever the kind of general, I wouldn't say it is a goal. It definitely is a goal for both of us to work towards. But I think that like in the one-to-one sessions I've had, there has been some aspiration, like with one particular mentee, she wanted to change roles and take on more responsibility. The irony was that when she kind of like, we went through the sessions, we planned them out that way. And so her goal was to sort of go for a more senior role somewhere else. She got to a point where she had invested so much time and effort into, a project that she created off her own back. She had an opportunity to present it in a meetup, and she had an opportunity to then get some response from a couple of industry, recruiters and people like that. And they were really totally putting her forward, for these roles. But the bizarre thing was that somebody at work, where she works, found out she was doing all this, and they just basically trumped her because they just offered her a much better role at work. They just said, "Oh, we didn't realize that you were trying to go for this kind of role. We'd like to address that and offer you like a slightly more, a higher role." And so it was a great outcome, but we were quite unprepared for what the outcome would be. So the outcome was good, but the goal was incidental, really.
What about you, James or Amy? Do you guys use any tool or templates or Canva?
In terms of setting up goals, my mentee specifically, he actually had just landed a role at the start of COVID at Atlassian. So our goal was specific and measurable. So it was more about how can I help him successfully onboard in the first 3 months at Atlassian. But then his bigger picture goal was to progress to a senior level. But just in talking to him and seeing his personality and realizing his skill set, I actually already realized that he was already at that senior level. So it was more about trying to get him to realize it for himself and just sort of work on the soft skills, which is what he wanted my advice on. Because a lot of times in being senior, you don't know everything, but you have that confidence to lead.
Yeah.
So even though I gave him specific tips in how to onboard in 3 months and set yourself up for your career, I also gave him bigger picture soft skill goals so he can eventually become a leader. So at least after the program, he still gets to work on their skills.
Anything to add, James?
No real templates. I kind of fell into it and sort of scrambled a little bit. As I said, it was just sort of falling back on some stuff I'd used in the past and just setting up that plan of what we were trying to achieve.
Cool.
I have a question here from the chat.
Yep.
So Rana says, as someone in early career, I find it challenging to define my career goals because I have little experience to draw from. Is it frustrating to mentor someone who is still undecided on their niche, or how has that openness been welcomed in the past as a mentor? Certainly situations I had as well.
I think, I can talk directly to this in that one of the exercises I did with my mentee was a skills matrix and asked her to focus in on things like what she wants to be known for, and the idea that you don't, and I think what happens to a lot of designers in UX early on is you are a little bit of a jack of all trades. You're doing a little bit of research, a little bit of UI, a little bit of UX thinking. But a couple of years in, you start finding out what you're good at. And sometimes when you're thinking of looking for work, articulating that, and as the question stated, what are my career goals, can be a bit struggling. But the exercise we went through focused the mentee on what they actually wanted to do. And, it's hard to say that, effectively not just going for every role, but really focusing in on what are the things that are going to make me happy and that I think I'm good at and what I can bring to a company. And so the end result of that is a career goal, but the reality is just looking at yourself and finding out what your skills are as they develop.
Anybody else wants to add to that one? Specifically for, I guess, advice to someone's coming out as a graduate or still studying currently.
Well, maybe I can just say when I met people that it was quite normal. I mean, nobody really knows where it's going to. Otherwise, you wouldn't need mentorship, and everybody needs mentorship in a way. So nobody really needs knows it all. And when I started my first job, I did not know where I was landing. It was a very big agency, and I had no idea. And I totally panicked after 3 months. And an older colleague, so that's not a program, but an older colleague came and he said, "Hey, Ulf, calm down. We all have no plan. We all don't know anything." I'm like, what the fuck? Okay, that's not really what I wanted to know, And we were doing amazing big projects. And like, I don't have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm learning that.
Yeah.
So I'm learning everything about the project. And so, yeah, I think that is more normal than you think, Rana. And and then you have people that help you on the way, right? I mean, that's what we do. We help ourselves.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna move on. So the next question is, what was your approach in giving advice to your mentee? What I mean by this is, I think we talk a lot already about certain scenarios and certain circumstances, but was there any sort of tips that you could probably give? So maybe for the new mentors that never been mentored before, how do you approach in giving an advice without sounding like you're telling them to do stuff? So I think there's a line between kind of getting them and telling them to do it and hand holding them versus to kind of guide and sort of steer them in the right direction, that sort of stuff. Amy?
I guess in terms of giving advice, because I've mentored mentees who either sometimes they lacked confidence in the ability to action things. So even when I was giving them specific advice, they'd kind of find hard to speak up. So even though that was my advice and I gave them tips on how to develop confidence in speaking up, I guess at a stand-up or whatever,
Mm.
I would give them other options as well.
Mm.
Or if it was about managing stakeholder relationships and they felt too shy to approach that particular stakeholder, I'll give them tips to work themselves up to that confidence level. So
Mhm.
at least, even though this is where they need to be, I'll give them little stepping stones to get there. And then it's up to them, I guess, to action it and then let me know how they went. And then if it didn't work, I'll give them other options. So at least they feel like they've been guided through the whole experience rather than me giving them a hard list and they just have to do it.
Yeah. That's really,
and
that's
also
really good
just
advice.
really setting the tone. I think a previous question about mentorship and teaching,
Mhm.
I kind of feel like it's a bit like a friendship as well, because you're not just teaching technical skills. They
Yeah.
do have, confidence issues, or there's, a difficult work person or a difficult stakeholder, or they lack confidence or something. So you are guiding them also on a personal level as well. So when the tone is that friendly, opening, I guess, framework or environment, they feel more receptive to your advice.
Yeah. That's really good advice. Thank you, Ermi.
Can I add to that that I think that from my perspective, in regards to approaching advice, if you've, and it's probably one of the reasons why I do have that sort of prerequisite of trying to work with someone that is sort of like working full time, or at least not working full time, but is in the workforce somehow. Is that you kind of, I find it a lot easier to talk to someone, give them advice as an equal, like as maybe one of my team members, so like, although I might be sort of a practice lead, and have been, I'm always learning from other people, and I believe that like this whole mentoring mentor program is very much about learning new skills personally. So I feel that like what I get out of it is an ability to work with somebody on issues and programs, and a plan of learning, if you like, that is quite structured, but at the same time has a really large degree of collaboration. So I think that's really key to it. Like if you collaborate with people at work effectively, you usually don't treat them as underlings. You treat them as equals, and you treat them as everyone's got their own skill set, and everyone's got something to add to the process. So I think my approach really is that treat people like you want to be treated yourself.
Good advice. Anything to add to that, James?
No, that's great.
I should start with you next.
There's been another question to the mentors. Who are your mentors? Yeah.
What was the question?
To the mentors, who are your mentors yourself?
Yeah, I think that is a challenge when you get older, to find mentors. Obviously, superiors in our workplace can often serve that function. Sometimes it can just be colleagues who excel and you admire, and you can have a coffee with. It's obviously a lot less formal, but I've made my last 3 job decisions primarily on, did that workplace have people that I felt could mentor me in areas that I lacked? And that was above and beyond, pay and work and everything else. It was the individuals that I felt I could grow with, because that's the best thing you take away. You take the work away and you take what you learn. And it can be very challenging. And generally in a room of UX designers, I will be the older grey bearded individual. And yet I've learned just as much from people in their 20s and their 30s. So I think mentorship and being a mentor or a mentee should be everyone's lifelong goal, and that they should be looking for those around them that they either need to assist lift up, or looking to learn from?
I am 110% agree with you, James. I think in that sort of regard as well is for me and my experience, as what you said, James. Like I think it's like I lucky enough to have a mentor when I started my career, which still is my mentor today, and that's probably over 20 years now. So it's quite a remarkable friendship, and it is a relationship at the end of the day. So even though like we sort of offer you, I guess in IxDA, for example, that sort of 3-month period, it sounds very short, but I always see mentorship relationship can continue as you progress with your career as well. And then I think over the years too, that my director, my superior, my manager, some of them are still my mentor today, even though I left that job 2-3 years ago. So yeah, I think I completely agree with that sentiment. Anybody else wants to add to that one? Should we?
Yeah, I can add to that.
Mm-hmm.
I 100% agree with what James said in terms of, I guess, who can you grow with? So in terms of who my mentors are, it's a combination of people I know on a very personal level. So one is my sister, one is my mum, and then pretty much the one common link that I have with all my mentors are people who I aspire to. So even though I was an official mentor for IxDA, I find myself, I'm continuously learning and growing. So to me, this is not it. So I'm still learning and growing too. So I would look for people who, are really high caliber in terms of their careers. So I'll ask advice from CEOs, or, have goals to be a TEDx speaker. So I'll reach out, the same way junior designers will reach out to me on LinkedIn, I do the same to other people as well. So I have that experience. Yeah, so I know that's nerve-wracking as well. Are they going to respond to me? Why would they want to help me? And so I think that's probably why I'm so willing to help, these people, these strangers reaching out to me, because sometimes I'll do the same. So that's how I want to be treated as well. Like I would really appreciate that advice. So I give that. Yeah.
Thanks, Amy.
Welcome.
Cool. I'm going to move on. So the next one, I guess this is probably a bit more practical level for the mentee. I haven't heard your voice for a while. What has helped you the most just throughout your experience? I'll start with Julia, because I can see your face.
What helped me the most? There's a couple of things. It's Hattie, her encouragement, her support, and her passion. And she always was there for me. And I can't imagine any better mentor. And I do believe and hope that we can save those relationships for later, and we can continue stay in contact and be able to have a chat. But yeah, her belief in me, her encouragement, her support really did help me to grow professionally and understand what's the skills required and really be able to see that bigger picture. So yeah, and different tools and different resources. She gave me lots of different links where I can learn a little bit more about here and there, and different areas where I can actually grow. Like one of the areas I was quite cautious, it was public speaking, and she encouraged me to do it, and here I am. So yeah, it's well, that encouragement and support from your mentor, it was really important for me.
Alice? You still there?
Sorry, yes, I'm still here. I was just having dinner in the background. That's why I muted myself and turned off my camera.
Feel free to have your dinner, guys.
I wholeheartedly resonate with Julia's comment around having a mentor being your cheerleader and encouraging you along the way, especially at the moments of doubts. I think for anyone that is new to design or still at a junior level where they experience lack of confidence and unsure exactly how to approach stakeholders, and to articulate your design process and design decisions, it could be quite daunting to first approach that. So my mentor Sam has been really encouraging and constantly nudging me to do stuff that I feel completely uncomfortable about. So the entire reasons why I got the side gig, or I decided to take the freelance, was because I share that opportunity, and he just said, go for it. Like, what's so bad about having just a kickoff conversations, learn about exactly what they want you to do. And that just like kick roll and shifted my mindset around, I'm not here to prove anything, but I'm going to use this as an opportunity for us to learn exactly how that process may look like. And as a result, what sort of learning I can then bring forward to my actual job at the design firm. So yes, and also
Excellent.
tons of prep work.
Okay, so to the mentor, what is your biggest challenges? Who wants to go first? James, what are your
Challenges
biggest
as a
challenges?
mentor. I think staying, and I think a few have hit on this, staying motivated. So obviously we do all have lives, and you know, we did agree to try and catch up weekly or fortnightly. I can't actually remember, but there was definitely a couple of missed sessions, and just staying focused and being present. You know, after a long day, we arranged to do it sort of after work on a Tuesday. And sometimes those Tuesdays were long days for me, and so staying motivated to engage in the program was a challenge on occasion. But every call that I dialed into, I was instantly rewarded with my mentee being very present and enthusiastic. And at the end of each call, I was reinvigorated, because you can have meetings during the day that can leave you frustrated, but I never left a mentee session frustrated. I was always quite enthusiastic as to the opportunity to pass on information, but also to see somebody absorbing that information so readily.
Thank you. Kevin, what's your biggest challenge? You've been a mentor for a long time with us as well, especially.
Not that long. You make it sound like I've been there, like, you know, since the dawn of man. No, I think biggest challenges really are, you know, creating that rapport in the beginning. Like you know, you really need to work at it, because you know, you're going to get someone that you like the sound of, but you know, you can easily blow it, you know, like in the first session. So you're going to make sure that you, as I said before, you're treating them with the respect that they deserve. And you know, I think going back to Miss point, you know, before about you expecting the same sort of like respect back as well, like that's important. And you know, like once you've built that rapport, you know, you really need to sort of like you know, walk the talk, so to speak. So you gotta like have relevant content that is going to work effectively, you know, for the mentee. And it's also got to be content that you prepare well. So preparation is key to it. And I think if you do that prep work as a real, you know, kind of benchmark for yourself, if you do the prep work, you know, well in advance of the session, it's a lot less stressful when the session suddenly you realize, oh God, I've got to switch from work mode to mentoring now. You know, it's like, you know, I found the last few years I've been doing it, like, you know, you kick off at 6 or 6:30 sometimes, dependent on the mentee. And, you know, I was finding myself like, you know, preparing at least 2 days, 3 days in advance. I'd stay back late or whatever one night and get it all done. And then like when the mentoring comes around, it feels, as James was saying, it's much less of a chore and more something you're really looking forward to, and you're looking forward to catching up. So I found it like, you know, really important to set goals, and you got to stick to them no matter what. So it's a lot easier to stick to your goals if you prepare well in advance. That's all.
Sure. Amy, what's your biggest challenge as a mentor?
Similar to James's, I think, in terms of that motivation. Like we are committed, but then we also have long days. Sometimes we're leading teams, we have stresses during the day, and then making sure you're really present for that half an hour or to 1 hour session, and making sure you really bring that energy, because even though we're a guide, we're also kind of leading the session as well. So if you're bringing that energy, it sets the tone for that whole session. Yeah, because sometimes it can be exhausting mentally and physically. You're listening, you're giving advice, you're helping them problem solve. Something didn't work, so you try another solution. So yeah, you are giving a lot, but then in terms of them listening, that's our reward, basically. Yeah.
Thank you. Next, so what advice would you give someone who is looking for a mentor, and how should they go about it? So someone ping you on LinkedIn, that's one way. I guess how should they approach it if someone's looking for a mentor? I think I'm going to throw this out to both mentor and mentees if they have any, or even anyone who wants to answer. Kevin? Any advice?
I think.
Well, I mean, sorry. Go on, Jay.
No, you go, Kev.
You take it. Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think you really have to engage and find out what type of advice they need. So it's very easy to pontificate, but often with teaching, if someone's not at the stage of that particular level of advice, you know, you have to always, having children, you can tell them anything and explain anything, but if it's beyond their comprehension, it's kind of pointless. And so I think depending on where a mentee is in their career, it has to be framed in that way. So there's no point in me discussing necessarily something of how I would solve something in my situation, because that might not be relevant to somebody who's more junior. So how I go about using, as Ermi said, the soft skills in politicking my way through Telstra, it would be very different to how a senior or mid-level designer should handle a situation. So I think context is really key.
Kev?
Yeah, sorry. I apologise. Well, I'm like Alice. I'm getting like, you know, late updates from customers who should be at home with their kids, not like sending me text messages. I was going to say, yeah, look, I think my advice, you know, for getting like, I mean, it's a really tricky one because, you know, this whole IxDA mentoring program, it's just like blows my head. Like it blows me away because I just think, well, like, you know, I wish I had this, like, you know, back in the day, because, you know, that would have been a great start to, you know, leaving art school and going into the real world. So, I mean, my only advice really would be like seize every opportunity. Like if you can pair up with somebody on a regular basis, like if you did this program for 3 years running and you paired up with 6 different types of mentor, I just think it would be invaluable. I mean, you know, this is a free service. It's basically the only cost to you is your time. the learning curve is immense. You know, if you got to work with 6 people over 3 years that are in the current mentoring program, and I know they are, you know, and like, you know, some of them I really want to be them, you know, mentee. I mean, I think of Lydia. I mean, like, to get like, you know, 3 months of Lydia's time on a regular basis would be just invaluable. You know, I'd say it was, you know, mentoring with someone like Lydia. She's probably going to freak out with me talking about her for so much time. But mentoring with someone like Lydia, her level and her expertise is almost like doing a free course at GA, you know, really, because like she's that advanced, she's that astute, she's very fast, very, you know, next level. So I think, you know, my advice would be go for it, you know, and keep coming back.
Emmy?
I would say anyone looking for a mentor should just sign up to IxDA and apply.
if they can't get in, we have limited spots.
Well, to be honest, I signed up in my first year of UX, and I don't think I was experienced enough, so I didn't get in. And then I applied again. I got into the group mentoring, and then I applied, I think, to be a mentor. I didn't get in, and then I applied again. So I just keep trying. But in terms of like full circle mentee, mentor experience, it's 100% worth it. And the fact that it's so guided, and I think your team keeps evolving and improving each time, it's only going to get better. So I would just say sign up to IxDA.
Get your money later.
Yeah, I get commission.
So I got one last question. I guess this is for both of you, the mentor and mentee. What would you do differently, or is there any tactic that you wouldn't try again? I'll start with the mentee first. Julia?
To be honest, I wouldn't change my experience. It was just great. I loved it, and I really achieved the goals I was looking for. The only thing I would potentially suggest, and which for me would work out quite well, is to have some sort of a meeting agenda. So whenever you come into the catch up with your mentor and mentee, you know what the subjects you want to cover. You will be aware of the time, and you understand what's there in that course to cover, as well as for you as a mentee, you would understand and really have a great focus of what do you need to prepare for, other than sometimes you have a rough idea, and then if you're not on the same page, you would prepare for a different thing, and you might potentially just wouldn't work out the way how you were expecting it to be. I'm not saying that happened to me. That didn't happen with my mentor. Patty was always on top of everything. But just based on my other experiences, meeting agenda always helps me to stay on top of those things and making sure we would cover it and we would stay on that. So yeah, that's the only thing I can think of.
Alice, anything you would do differently?
Everything went much better than I anticipated, so probably nothing. I would love to repeat that process again, experience just in loop. That would be great. But then if there's one thing I would love to do differently next time around, is to actually document the entire process. Everything was happening really fast, and I didn't expect what's going to happen next, and as a result, I didn't document the I guess insights, learning, and feedback that I got each sessions I have with Sam. I wish I have documented it, but this is purely for a personal greed and also a habit of mine, just to document the entire process, so that when I look back, I can synthesize and formulate exactly what worked, what didn't work, and what I can take forward for the next time around.
Cool. From the mentors, is there anything you would do differently next time? Or try different new things, or wouldn't try again?
I don't know if it's anything different, but, you know, I'm just hoping, praying that, you know, post-COVID, that mentoring circle comes back. But the thing that I think would be a really great benefit to that mentoring circle would be to have one of those kind of, IxDA one-to-one kickoff sessions, but for the mentoring circle, because I think that was just so cool. It was one of the coolest nights ever, and I love the way you structured that. I love the activities that you did. I love the fact that people were able to kind of move around. As I said before, I think like something like that, if you've got a mentoring circle and you invited, say, like 3 different mentoring circles to that one event, and then you had like an opportunity for those mentees to, meet their contemporaries and meet their, peers. It just gives them all a bit more, what's the word of a sense of purpose. I loved it. It's great.
Emmy, James, anything to add?
There's nothing I would probably do differently, but if I did mentor again through IxDA, and because Alice, you seem very thorough, and if I had a mentor like Alice, I probably need to pick up my game and make sure I come prepared with notes, because my mentee and I, we just winged each session, but that was our style. Well, like, we didn't have any notes. I think I checked the CV.
She will force you to, Abby.
And then, like, we agreed up front I wouldn't give him any homework.
I would like to clarify, there was no pressure being articulated onto Sam.
You're setting the bar, Alice.
He did not know I got like tons of post-it notes at the back. I only show him after we finish the session.
I think Sam's here. I want to hear from Sam. There he is.
I did nothing. I was
easy.
only prepared for the first session, and after that it was all Alice, and every session after that. So
see, you got easy one.
Yeah. Alice led the session then.
Exactly. Okay.
I think if I did it again, I would definitely plan a little bit more, and potentially lay out the time a little bit better. I think, with COVID, we pivoted quite a bit, and we really had a really good relationship in terms of delivering tangible outcomes to my mentee. And I think, with experience that would improve over time. And I think, any plan is only good until you engage. So I don't think I'd overplan, but I do think that having a little bit more structure at the outset with, a few different flavors of approach would make some of those early sessions where we were still finding our way a little bit smoother. But then, we did start slow, but we were quite quickly up to speed, and it was quite dynamic after that. So I think having a few of those things up my sleeve would be really good for next time around.
Thank you. Okay, so just before we move on so I've got some, that's kind of the end of the sort of, I guess, my question to the panel. Was there any question from the audience before we move on to the next sections? No?
I had a couple of questions if I'm able to throw them out.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Denise.
Yes.
I'm based in Sydney. And I actually wrote down quite a few, but I'll try and limit myself. One of the things I realized was Ermi mentioned that one of the first times she applied, she didn't have enough experience and didn't get in. So what kind of minimum requirements would you say there are as an entry level? And I'm going to add a second part onto this and say, how important or not important is it to have a project ready to go?
Is that questions to me?
Well, to you, and then to the mentors. So, you know, for the mentors, if you've had a mentee that didn't have a project or did, like, which one did you prefer? How did you find the experience was? If you have more than one kind of experience to draw upon.
Okay, so I'll probably answer that from the IxDA kind of selection point of view. So unfortunately, we always going to have at least twice as many mentees and in the ratio of mentors, and then sometimes we have about 4 to 1. So we really have to make a really hard decision whether or not you be paired with someone. And having said that, like Amy said, don't be despair, try again and keep trying. So in terms of whether or not you have a project, we do look at those. And I think what we look at in the application is the way you articulate why you want to be mentored and what is it that you want to get out of it. And the more you can give us that insight, whether you have a project, if you have a project, yes, that's great, actually a bonus, but it's not a requirement. It's more around being able to articulate, because there's so many applications out there, right? So obviously the more you can sort of put your argument forward why you really want to be mentored this time, then that's what we consider. So we do read out every single application, believe it or not. We have already about, I think, 80 applications for the mentee for the next round. And yes, so it is a laborious process. So I guess that's kind of my advice would be just be very articulate about how you present yourself. It's almost like you're pitching yourself in a way, unfortunately. So yeah, that would be probably my advice in terms of getting into the program.
And I was just going to say as well, it's people of all experience levels. Like, you don't necessarily have to have work experience, because on the mentor side, we ask people if they prefer to mentor with recent students, current students, people who are senior, people who are mid. So.
Having said that, though, we do probably give priorities to people that are already working, even in their first year of experience, just because I think we felt that it was more beneficial. The program will be offering them a lot more benefit to them in guiding them through that career journey, rather than someone who's still studying, who doesn't quite know what's to expect. And then especially when it's a very different level of mentoring, I guess, in that sense. So it depends on the type of mentors that we have, as what Mary said, who are looking for that kind of criteria. And then a lot of them usually want to get someone who already working, probably in their first or second year of experience, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. And if any mentors had any experiences to draw upon as far as working with someone that had a project versus not. I don't know if they have anything to add.
Yeah, I can add that. I've mentored, I think, more junior designers or maybe recent UX grads. So they could only draw upon the UX project that they did at GA. So I had to kind of cater my mentoring advice to them on what their next steps would be to try to land their first role, compared to someone who was already in their first role. So my advice was more about job hunting tips and how to improve their portfolio, their CV, LinkedIn profile.
I think there are a lot of programs out there and maybe courses where you can learn how to go into the industry, but so people feel, okay, I landed my first job, so success. But I mean, that's where you're starting, and that's where are you going to go from there? And that's where that kind of program helps you most, because there's not a lot of stuff out there. So I think a lot of people ended up asking then otherwise, how can I get a job there, etc. But it depends on the market itself. There's not so much that somebody who's in the industry can help you. But once you landed your first job, how are you going to continue? So I found that the most valuable, frankly, because there are not so many other places where you can learn exactly that.
Kevin, is there anything you want to add?
I've got to keep remembering to unmute. Sorry. I just get caught up with the conversation. Sorry, can you just rephrase the question? I've been listening to too many conversations then. Sorry. Yeah.
Sure. I just kind of wanted to delve in and find out how imperative it is to have a project ready. And as a mentor, like, is it easier to guide someone or to mentor them when they don't have a project, or when they do? Do you have a preference?
I think personally, I've done both. I've actually done one session where halfway through the sessions we'd planned and agreed on, by the way, the motivation of the mentee to put a lot of the skills into practice that she couldn't do at work overtook her, and then she, invented this new project, this real project. I think at the sort of inception of that, I was a bit worried. I thought, oh God, how's she going to do that and keep up with the rest of the sessions as we have agreed, But, this particular lady's superhuman. So she did all the sessions that we had planned and enjoyed them. But she also did this other. So what we would do, it's interesting, isn't it? What we would do is we'd do the first hour on the sessions that we agreed, and then we extended it by half an hour, and we were meeting like one-to-one back in the pre-COVID days. So we were meeting like at my work, and we had a studio, and we had like computers and all sorts of things at our disposal. So we would do our first hour, and then we'd have a break, have a snack, have a chat, and then do another half an hour on this project of hers. And it kind of worked. And the only benefit really was, I think I mentioned the story earlier, is that, she was setting, herself a goal to have something to present, in an interview scenario. And it was a personal project as well. She really wanted to develop a mobile app. So she wanted to get inside the sort of design. She also wanted to get inside the programming. She wanted to get inside a lot of aspects of the production of the app, and apply some of the other key skill sets that we'd spoken about throughout that program. So in that essence, I would say that it works for some people, but it might not work for everyone. It particularly worked for, that superhuman UX designer. But some people might just find the fact that, if they have a project in mind, and it relies on a lot of technical know-how, then it might limit the sort of, I wouldn't call myself a technical know-how type person. So I probably wouldn't be able to give a lot of practical advice on how to recode it and stuff like that. But, I think if it's a project, I think, who is it was on the court? Who is it earlier said that they'd had that, Alice. Alice was saying that she had that freelance project. Something like that, if the freelance project is brought to the table and there's a consensus between the mentor and the mentee that's got to take priority, because that's a real job and Alice is going to get paid for it, and therefore she needs some help and some advice, and she needs mentoring in that scenario. Excuse me. I think that that's a good thing. Like I said before, those projects do gives like a sense of momentum, a sense of accomplishment, and there's a little bit of a uniformed expectancy that you're going to get it right, and that you want to get it right, no matter what. So yeah, it's different for everybody, but I would say that if you come to the mentoring program with an open mind, and like if a project presents itself and you feel that you want to present it to your mentor, I would. But at the same time, I would apply, just wanting to get some new skills.
Yeah, I think just to add to that as well is, I guess, to iterate. So the project is really sometime when you have a project, it's good because then you have some kind of goal to kind of help you frame that, as in, okay, so I need help with this. So it's almost like a focus on what is it that you need to get help on, but it's not necessarily has to be a project. So, okay. Right. So we got so I set up this session sort of like 2 hours. We have really, really interesting conversation. And then the next section is actually about I was going to share some of the tips that we learned, and we already covered some of this. So I'm going to just run through this really quite quickly, because there's no point delving into it, because I think we discussed them quite a bit already on this panel discussion, which is really, really interesting. So as you know, like the first thing is, as mentorship is a relationship. So, as what we heard from Kevin and all the panelists as well, it's all about relationship. Building that trust and rapport is probably the most challenging time. So don't rush. That's what we said to you. Try to get to know one another, but keep it professional. So this is something that sometimes came up. Fortunately it's not too often, but there is certain awkwardness, and this is when we kind of the two of you meet as strangers. Sometimes things misunderstood, the way how you try to build that rapport for one another. So personality clash might happen and things like that. So yeah, understanding that boundaries is quite important. The second thing that we learn is set ground rules. So this is, I think, mentioned a couple of times before as well. Be clear about how you want to work together in terms of being transparent, being honest, make that commitment, create a schedule. So but still flexible. So we talked about flexibility before, be able to pivot if you need to. And finally, respect that rules. So don't create, talk about, you want to do this, but then, you say you're going to commit into this particular activity, but you're not doing it. So it comes both ways, right? And also we think that these sort of ground rules set up earlier in the process is so important. And then I think I keep talking about this, especially for the group mentoring, which is where the mentoring circle. So being able to establish how you want to work as a group is very different to how you want to work as a one-to-one relationship. Clear goals. So we talked about goals before. So again, being clear about what you want to achieve. Be realistic is probably the most important one here, and be specific about the problem that you want to, what you need help with. What the success look like, and then being able to measure that progress as well. And obviously, as we mentioned before, so I think the mentor is kind of play a significant role in this, to kind of guide the mentee in terms of setting out and focusing on that achievable goals, rather than just very, I want to be a great designer. Mentors, there's lots of tips about being supportive. So this is just some of them that we just put together. Obviously, mentorship is about meeting where the mentee's at. We've mentioned this before, and you hear this again. Discover what drives your mentee. Invest time to look at their influences. Listen and read the subtext. And this is I think Ermi said this before, like, when you're listening to what the mentee is telling you, don't rush into solving that problem, but sometimes you sort of just listen to what not being said, and you might find that what they tell you the problem was not really the problem. Maybe it's underlying problem that they need help with. And be specific with your guidance, and introduce them to your network. And a lot of the mentees, one of the reasons that they want to be mentored by someone like you is so they could kind of help. They need help to kind of spread their wings in a way. What is that, Kevin? For mentees, be like Alice. Be proactive and prepare. Come prepare with topic that you want to address. Prepare questions before the session. It's just like some of the things that you can do to make sure that your session is a bit more productive. And of course, for mentors, it is, make sure that you are learning as well. So, you can use your mentee as your sounding board. And I think we talk a lot about learning from each other, from the discussions as well. So it's not just about the mentee, but it's also about the mentors. And lastly is just checking in and reflection. So I always apply this sort of kind of test and learn, doing a bit retro check-ins, have a check-in when you reach milestones or completed a task. How did you go about doing them, and what did you learn? So, Alice, you mentioned about that you want to document those process a little bit better. I think that's a great idea. Then you can always learning from that process. So that's kind of just a bit of a summary of what we have, just from kind of running this program, really. So before we wrap up, I realize this is quite late already. Was there any other final questions? Comments? No?
One question came up.
Yep.
If we extend the program now outside of Sydney as well.
Say it again.
The mentor. The question came up if we would extend the mentoring program outside of Sydney as well, or if it's just for Sydney.
We did. I think the answer to that is we didn't close it, as we didn't exclude any people that was outside Sydney. So, but we also didn't advertise them outside Sydney. Does that make sense? if the people who came across our membership because that's how we announce them, they're from Brisbane or Melbourne, or I guess in the US, Australia now, you got, people from all over Australia. Being remote, I think that's an open invitation. Okay, so application term 2, as I said, is closing this Friday. And if you're still if you're interested, you can go to the Miro board in UX Australia and get the link from there to apply. And
I popped the link in the chat as well.
Oh, great. Thanks, Mary. And then, currently, this is yesterday when I checked, we have 35 mentors application and 72 mentee applicants. So that's quite a stiff competition. Finally, please thank you to all of you who participated. Thank you to our panel for their insights and their stories. And also thank you to UX Australia for the opportunity for hosting this event. And lastly, thank you to IxDA Sydney and my team for helping me hosting this event. So
well done, guys.
I hope you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks for
everyone
attending.
Great.
Yeah, I hope you learned something tonight. So